What's up, everybody? Welcome in Man in the Cage podcast pop-up episode. As I was saying on YouTube, again, go follow me at Man in the Cage Pod on Twitter and on Instagram for a ton of MMA coverage, of course, with the podcast and other stuff like this, where just an impromptu episode where I wanted to jump on, wanted to talk about some things as we have a lot going on this week, and we have a PFL card coming up tonight. PFL 4, Claressa Shields in the main event taking on Brittany Elkin. And I'll get to all of that in a second, and that's going to be the main part of what I'm doing today. Wanted to give a little bit of a preview for PFL 4, give some thoughts on it before we hit the top of the hour in which the card will get underway. Mostly some main card thoughts. The overall card itself, though, pretty good. Have all of that for 1 second, all of that for you in 1 second. And then we'll also kind of look ahead briefly to what we have coming up on later this week. But first, again, follow me on Twitter at Man in the Cage Pod. Same thing on Instagram at Man in the Cage Pod. Go to the website, maninthecagemmma.show. You're already on the YouTube channel, but if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to it, the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast YouTube channel. And then if you're more old school, if you want to check out all the audio platforms, if you're driving around, want to listen to the podcast that way, go to Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. You can follow, hit the subscribe button on all of those. All right, so that's all the details surrounding it. Oh, and by the way, go check out episode 93. That was from this past Monday. I had Tom Albano from fansided.com on. We talked about UFC Vegas 28. We reacted to a bunch of the Logan Paul, Floyd Mayweather stuff, and oh boy, I'm so sick of it already. I don't even want to hear the name Logan Paul or Floyd Mayweather right now after all the conversations I've heard and that I've had over this past week, including the podcast episode. But if you're interested in it, go check it out. We did get into some of the UFC 263 stuff at the end of that podcast episode, so go check that out right now. And then I'll have episode 94 coming up, actually recording it, doing a live now, and then I'm recording it tonight. I'll have some special things going on there. Going to preview Bellator 260, going to preview UFC 263, get into a little bit of the Shakur Stevenson boxing, him returning to the boxing ring on Saturday. So all of that stuff coming up on episode 94 that'll probably drop tomorrow morning. So I'll get done with it very late here. So be on the lookout for that. And something special I also have coming up tonight too. Not going to be released this weekend or this week, but I am going to be interviewing Bellator middleweight Lance Wright. He's going to jump on with me tonight. Very excited about this. Trains out of Team Elevation in Colorado. Going to have him jump on with me, chat about his upcoming Bellator debut and when she's going to fight Taylor Johnson, his opponent, what was like being signed by Bellator, some other little things here, what it's like training at Team Elevation, all that good stuff. I'm going to get into all of that with him, and then that'll be released next week, so be on the lookout for that as well. So all that's coming up tonight. A lot of things going on right here on the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. So make sure, again, you follow everywhere, and you follow me on Twitter at Man in the Cage Pod. All the coverage I have, including Bellator Media Day yesterday. Got to attend the Bellator virtual media day yesterday. Asked a bunch of questions to a bunch of fighters. Great stuff. I've got a lot of those videos all up on Twitter already. Some of them are up on Instagram as well. So go check those out, and I'm going to have some more stuff coming up Friday post-fight with a lot of those fighters, as well as I'm also going to be attending the Bellator post-fight press conference for Bellator 260. But again, that's coming down the line. The purpose of this today is that I'm not going to have a preview on episode 94 for PFL 4 tonight. So wanted to get into that just a little bit. That way I do get some sort of PFL 4 preview out there. And I have tweeted out some of my thoughts already. I've had a bunch of stuff throughout the week I've been getting out there, but here's just some thoughts, some of my preview for this card tonight. And for those that don't know, a lot of you already know, but a couple names that are off this card the last few days or so, which has made this card a little bit more interesting, is that Lance Palmer's off this card, and so is Anthony Pettis. Lance Palmer, always fun because of what he's been able to do inside the PFL. So losing a name like that on this card definitely hurts a little bit. And then, of course, Anthony Pettis. I mean, whether you're a casual fan or a diehard fan, everybody wanted to see Anthony Pettis compete again, especially because he had lost to his last time out, Clay Collard, who's also fighting tonight, but he lost in his PFL debut. Anthony Pettis needs a big-time finish in order to make it to the PFL playoffs. So there's a lot of intrigue there for me. So I really wanted to see Anthony Pettis on this card. Obviously, not going to happen. He gets sick. He gets pushed out of this card and into the June 25th card. So Anthony Pettis, his hopes of being in the PFL playoffs, definitely not dead yet, but we're just going to have to wait a little bit for all that intrigue. So there's a couple names off this card. So where is the intrigue on this card? Well, it's an easy one. And to be honest with you, and that's where I'm just going to start here today, most of what I'm going to talk about is Claressa Shields and Brittany Elkin. And a lot of diehard MMA fans and a lot of combat sports fans will roll their eyes at that because they want to hear about all the other great mixed martial arts matchups, right? They want to hear about all these other things. frankly, this is, no matter what, this was going to be the biggest fight on the card, though. I know the diehards, I know you hate it, but this is the biggest fight on the card, is Clarissa Shields and Brittany Elkin. Not ripping any other matchups. I'll cover the rest of them, going to watch a lot of them. A lot of them might even be obviously more entertaining, better matchups, more competitive. But for at least, the captioning the public's interest, this is that fight, though, Clarissa Shields and Brittany Elkin. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, a lot is being made of the boxer and Clarissa Shields making her MMA debut tonight, coming from the boxing world, training at Jackson Wink MMA, getting ready to step into this time PFL cage, stepping into an MMA cage versus a grappler, essentially, versus I don't want to say pure mixed martial artist, but somebody who obviously has practiced over the years jiu-jitsu, someone over the years has practiced that grappling side of things, which is the opposite of boxing, obviously. So there's a lot of intrigue there between boxer and grappler. Then you add on top that, Clarissa Shields, just everything she's been in boxing, it makes her a potential MMA star. And that's another one that I know, again, I'm going to say a lot of things today that the diehard MMA fans aren't going to like, and a lot of you roll your eyes at that. And I'm not saying she's going to be a star. She's got to win, and I'll get to a lot of that in a second. She's got to win. She's got to keep winning in the future, but there's that potential there. And I always say on the podcast, right, potential, that P word is very dangerous to use sometimes. So it is dangerous here, but the potential of being an MMA star for Clarissa Shields is there. So you have all of those coming into this thing. And again, it's just overall, combat sports is about entertainment. And that's why anybody that would come to me and say, why'd you spend time on this live video, or why'd you spend some time on the preview of PFL 4 talking about this bout? There's so many other great fights. And I would tell them, if you're not into it, then go watch a different sport, frankly, because the state of combat sports in general, it's about entertainment, right? And this is pure entertainment here. We just got done a bunch of people over $1 million of money, or at least 1 million pay-per-views. Guys, I can't remember what the actual number was, what the stat was, but over 1 million of something happened on Sunday night when people tuned in to watch Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather. So, is this the worst thing in the world? I don't think it's worse than what we saw Sunday night. I think this is actually great for the sport. And I will say this as I get into this matchup a little bit more and dissect it a little bit more deeply here. I will applaud Clarissa Shields for doing this. And I think you definitely have to do that. Win or lose tonight, think that she's going to lose badly, want her to lose badly. I think you have to applaud her just a little bit, though, that, anytime a combat sports athlete, anytime any kind of athlete is willing to go cross sports, willing to go try something new, play a new position, or pull a Deion Sanders and go play baseball when you're playing football. Or in this case, Clarissa Shields go to mixed martial arts, which is maybe one of the toughest transitions in all of pro sports, all of them. I mean, we're not talking about going from the NFL to baseball where you're not getting hit. We're talking about somebody going from a sport where, you're throwing your fists and you're used to hitting people and being hit yourself in boxing. But now you're going to a sport where you're going to have that happen to you still, but there's going to be someone trying to, make you go to sleep with a rear naked choke with some sort of lower leg submission, the takedowns, the grappling. You're going to get all that. So I do think you have to applaud Clarissa Shields just a little bit tonight going into this one. Now, the matchup itself here, and by the way, at the media day presser and all that good stuff yesterday, and I wanted to get into that just a little bit because I do think that's another intriguing part about this fight, that Clarissa Shields talks a massive game. She's such a great talker. And I think she learned that from boxing. And I think she learned that from the promoters there, that a lot of boxing greats, a lot of boxing promoters are great at finding somebody that can talk really well and then having that person use that platform to do it, right? To promote fights. And that's what Clarissa Shields definitely does very well, though. She talks a big game. She's, especially yesterday, though, or I believe it was yesterday, yes, at the press conference where, she's talking about how she's going to, she's not, Brittany Elkin's not great at anything, all those types of things. She talks a big game and it helps pub up fights. And that's another reason why she could be again, dangerous word, potential MMA superstar if she's able to win down the line. So, Clarissa Shields talking a big game. Brittany Elkin, she's going kind of ho-hum for the most part, that she's just, hey, you know what? I'm here. I'm glad that she even said this, that I'm glad that all the attention is on Clarissa Shields, because I think the media in general was going to ask her questions or was interested in, does all this attention, because it's only human, right? I mean, if I was in a fight or, going into a fight, or if I was going into a big game or something, and all the intrigue, all the interest, all the questions were on somebody else, you'd probably feel a little bit, you'd feel a little mad about it. You'd probably feel a little angry. You'd probably feel a little jealous. There's probably a lot of things that would go through your mind there. And the media was trying to get that out of Brittany Elkin this week, but she wasn't having it for the most part. She was just saying, the go-to standard answers of, hey, I'm glad that the attention is on her. because then I could go train and then you guys aren't asking me questions in the gym. So she seemed to be okay with it. Now, there was one time, though, and it does make me worry, and I do think this answer she gave could go both ways for Brittany Elkin. There was one time, though, where she said the talk of Clarissa Shields and all the interest in her is like cheese on a, she said it was like cheese on a cheese grater. It's like grating cheese. I think that's the exact word she said. It was like grating cheese and the blocks getting thinner and thinner. And she didn't directly say, hey, screw that chick. I don't want to, screw that woman. I don't want to go, I'm going to go beat her up. I'm going to go, submit her. I'm tired of this. But she had that tone of just like, okay, yes, I do deep down think this is enough. I am a little bit mad that nobody's even mentioning me. But after that, she went back to home. So again, that comment from Brittany Elkin, it does make me think two things, that either maybe deep down she is letting it get to her, or maybe she is going to use it as momentum and use it as fire in her belly to go out there and, perform better against Clarissa Shields. I think it could go one of two ways, but those are just some media day thoughts. Now, the matchup itself, like I was getting into here between Clarissa Shields and Brittany Elkin, it's really going to come down to a couple things for Clarissa Shields. And I really think that's the story of this fight, obviously. I mean, Clarissa Shields itself, but the main story and the main key to this fight for Clarissa Shields is what's her learning curve, all right, and what is the athleticism gap between these two women? I really think that's what's going to come down to. One of those or both of those things, I think that if Clarissa Shields, obviously over the last year or however long she's been training at Jackson Wink, everyone's different. You hear stories about in the NFL, Patrick Mahomes being able to, watch a play and then being able to remember it, 3, 4, 5 plays. He's able just to remember everything in that play. That can't be taught, right? That's something that's special about Patrick Mahomes. There's certain fighters, George St. Pierre, I think he's always had it. I think there's the greats in boxing, Muhammad Ali, all the other ones. You can go through all the list. Conor McGregor at one point in his career. At some point, some fighters, some athletes, they just have that it factor where they learn quickly, they see things, they diagnose things quickly. And I think that's going to be one of the main talking points here with Clarissa Shields is what kind of learning curve does she have? What kind of athlete is she that, is she special enough to be able to go do 6 months, whatever it is, again, a year of MMA training, and then go out there and stuff takedowns? Because that's where everyone's going to try to get this fight. No one's going to want to, I won't say no one's going to want to box with her, because it is different in MMA still. You're going to get your Muay Thai athletes. You're going to get your karate athletes. You're going to get some Taekwondo, obviously, kickboxing. So you're going to get some of those other elements of combat sports facing Shields, and she will be tested on the feet, I'm sure, at some point here, maybe even in this fight. I don't know. I think it'd be dumb for Elkin. I think her one shot is to get this fight to the ground, but who knows? I mean, we'll see. But so I think it's not that she won't be tested in MMA, but for the most part, women fighters are going to try to get her to the ground. They're going to try to grapple, and it's about what that learning curve is for Clarissa Shields. How fast did she develop these skills? We're going to learn a lot of that tonight. And if she passes it for the most part, and sometimes you can pass something if you lose, I think you can pass sometimes. Like this past Saturday, UFC Vegas 28, Miguel Baeza lost against Santiago Ponzinibbio, but I think he passed that test. And I talked about that on episode 93 of the Man in the Cage podcast. There's so many times in sports, it's very rare that you get something like that where an athlete passes a test when they lose. So I think that's possible for Shields here, but it depends. It's all going to depend on the performance. I don't even want to get into that yet because we don't know what she's going to do really. That's a whole different, that's a whole other conversation. We could have a whole 2 hours of talk about that. So I want to get back into this again about the learning curve and Shields and more dissecting that. But yeah, I mean, it's about that learning curve for Clarissa Shields here. How fast is she going to develop it? We'll find a lot of that out tonight. And then the other one I said, the athleticism gap. Because you do see fights sometimes, and Greg Hardy proved this. When he came from the NFL into the UFC, Greg Hardy proved that, and again, Greg Hardy was trying hard, and he was training. He may have even trained, I'd have to look, to be honest with you, trained a little longer than Clarissa Shields did, but he came into the UFC MMA, and a lot of MMA fans thought right away he's going to get grappled, he's going to get submitted, he's going to learn this isn't a sport for him. And he wasn't even in a combat sport before, by the way. Again, he's a defensive lineman in the NFL, and we've seen now a lot of that taking a toll on his career where he's nothing special unless something really clicks with him at some point. He's nothing special. But I think a lot of people at first, and even in the middle of his journey here in MMA, thought, oh, he's gonna lose bad at some point. He's gonna lose right away. He's gonna get taught a lesson. But he was able to get by on athleticism a lot of the times. And Clarissa Shields is an athlete. She is an athlete. She's got a strong lower half, which I think is going to be important for her, especially with those takedowns. If she can sprawl correctly, if she can get the fight, if she can get her back to the cage, not have those takedowns, not get the hands sunk in of some of those double leg takedown attempts, single leg takedown attempts, those types of things. That athleticism gap could be something too that we see from Claressa Shields. And oh, by the way, as I'm talking about this, if you have any questions, let me make sure there's no questions on the line right now. Now, if you have any questions tonight, feel free to submit them in the chat. I'll try to answer them the best I can. Just send them in, anything. Again, questions, comments, anything about this fight. But, the athleticism from Claressa Shields, it could get her by in a lot of early fights here. And that could be the story here too. And again, it's about the gap though. What kind of athlete is Brittany Elkin? We really don't know that necessarily. We've seen her in the cage, but she's 3-6 in her career. She doesn't look overly athletic. She's lost to women like Kayla Harrison, who are in the Olympics, who are way more athletic than her. So we'll see. We'll see where that athleticism gap is that really could help Claressa Shields tonight. In her MMA debut, she steps out of the boxing ring into the MMA cage here. And a couple more things before I get into my actual prediction for this fight, and then I'll go through 3 of the other main card fights real quick, and then I'll get out of here and then again turn the page a little bit. Just a couple more things on this matchup, though. I think something that's not being talked about enough here is that, and I was talking about this with a buddy earlier today, that everyone's talking about, and I even just did it a lot, about the actual fundamentals of this fight, learning MMA, the athleticism of this fight. But I think something to take into account too is that the PFL probably has an interest in Claressa Shields. And I'm not saying they're throwing the fight, because I'm not saying that at all. I think if she gets tripped up, she gets tripped up. I don't know if the PFL, they're not going to rig it so she wins. But I do think they probably set her up for the best possible matchup in their minds tonight against Brittany Elkin. I think there's a lot of things, and again, you look at Brittany Elkin's career, you look at what she's done in her career, I think there's a lot of things that the PFL likes about this matchup. So, because they have a lot of interest in this. Claressa Shields, if she gets to be a big-time MMA star, she's not going to be in the PFL anymore. She will be fighting in the UFC. She'll be fighting in Bellator against Cyborg or Amanda Nunes at some point, or some of those women. She's not going to be in PFL. But for the short term here, win or lose long term, this is great news for the PFL. They have a big star. They even put her in the main event spot. It's why I tend to think that this is a perfect matchup for Claressa Shields, that there's something everybody out there behind the scenes wasn't taking into account as much, that this is the perfect matchup for Claressa Shields, that you probably don't have an overly athletic woman in Brittany Elkin. And I'm going to eat my words tonight. If Brittany Elkin goes out there, which could be a possibility, I'm going to have to eat my words a little bit, but I do think there's probably a great possibility that the PFL knows Brittany Elkin's probably not necessarily the best athlete on the planet, that her jiu-jitsu and grappling is good, but it's not the best grappling and jiu-jitsu on the planet. Her striking is probably way below average, so Claressa Shields can really take advantage of that. I think it's something to take into this matchup. I think everyone just thinks Brittany Elkin, or a lot of people, some of the diehard MMA fans, think that Elkin's just going to go roll up Claressa Shields. We'll see. Again, I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I'll get to my official prediction here, but I think we need to look at this though too and say the PFL is probably setting this up for a Claressa Shields win tonight. Obviously, we'll see if she gets it though, because it's not like we've never seen that an organization promotion set something up for a fighter and then that fighter disappoint in that matchup that they give them. So that's a factor we need to take into account on this one. And then also, I will say this too about Claressa Shields. I already applauded her, but this is a big time fight for her tonight. That if she does trip up for some reason to Brittany Elkin, or she loses badly, or she doesn't look great. Actually, I'll say, even if she doesn't look great, she'll obviously get some more opportunities. But if she loses tonight, I mean, I don't know how many more opportunities, chances she's going to want to take. And then because she's got a boxing career, she says she wants to make some money. That's why she's doing it too, that she wanted to go to MMA, because she didn't feel she was being paid or due in boxing, in women's professional boxing. But would she want to, risk that image? Would she want to risk losing more and more and have that ego hit a little bit more? I don't know the answer to that. So I do think if she loses tonight, I don't know if she tries this too many more times. You know what I mean? So I do think the pressure is on Claressa Shields tonight to perform. She looks calm, though. She looks comfortable. She's been in a million fights. She's been in the Olympics. I don't think the pressure is going to get to her, but this is a big fight for her, and the pressure is on her compared to Brittany Elkin, where if Elkin loses, it's just, hey, some woman, right? Some woman went in there and she tested Claressa Shields the first time in her first MMA bout. So that's another factor going into this fight of Claressa Shields and Brittany Elkin. All right, finally here, prediction time. it's so hard to predict for me because everything I just went through, the positives of Clarissa Shields. And again, by the way, normally on the podcast for those out there that listen to obviously all the preview shows I do, I'll go through the strengths and weaknesses of each fighter. This fight's a little different, obviously. It's kind of like the Logan Paul Floyd Mayweather fight where you're not going to really go through too many strengths and weaknesses in the fight. And I've already mentioned a lot of them anyway. So we're not going to do that. It's just getting straight down to the prediction here that it is hard to predict because it is a grappler versus boxer. And it really is going to come down to how much has Clarissa Shields learned? How is Brittany Elkin? Is she good enough to capitalize on the learning curve if it isn't there? And then that athleticism gap from Clarissa Shields, is it big enough here where she maybe even can get by on some athleticism like Greg Hardy has done and other athletes where you can just get out of situations, get out of takedowns because of your athleticism, because you're the better athlete. We could see that too, and that's what makes this so hard to predict. So with that, all that said, I will not sit on a fence. I will give a prediction here, and I'm going to actually go with Shields by TKO. I think Clarissa Shields gets the job done tonight. Again, not an overly confident one, and for you bettors out there, for your combat sports bettors, and I know a lot of people on Twitter. I saw a lot of betting Twitter, a lot of MMA bettors out there taking Brittany Elkin tonight at a plus number. She's not overly, she's not plus 500, but she's sitting around plus 200 right now. Again, for you bettors, I don't hate that. I actually think the pick here is Shields. I think the play, if you're going to bet it, is probably Brittany Elkin. Although, again, this is just, it's such a tough matchup, but I'm going to go with Clarissa Shields. I'm going to bank on that this is the perfect matchup set up by the PFL, that her athleticism is better than Brittany Elkin, and that her learning curve is good enough, at least right now, to get the job done tonight. I think she TKOs her, probably second round maybe. I think she gets her hands going. And I did, my guy Jason from Glove Talk, who I brought on the podcast before, he brought up the other day on Twitter that Clarissa Shields in boxing doesn't have a ton of power. She's not a fighter with a ton of power. I still think that's going to play a little bit in MMA. She might not have the most power in the world, but I think when she puts those 4-ounce gloves on tonight, I think you're going to see some more power unveiled, and she's going to be able to light up opponents with combinations. Because boxers in MMA, traditionally, guys who actually really practice boxing, they have their grappling side, they have their wrestling side of things, and then focus on boxing. They've done very well. Nate Diaz, not recently, but in his career, Nate Diaz is a boxer and a jiu-jitsu fighter, right? That's what Nate Diaz does. So I do think the hands of Clarissa Shields will play well in this fight. It's just about whether she can stuff those takedowns, doesn't get in a bad predicament, get out grappled. We've seen it many times in women's in mixed martial arts. The Valerie Loretta Hannah Guy fight, a couple weeks ago on Bellator 259, Valerie Loretta comes in all the hype in the world. Hannah Guy just goes out there and grapples her. I do think that was somewhat of a different matchup, though. I think if this was Hannah Guy versus Clarissa Shields, I do think we'd be talking about something different here, but it's Brittany Elkin. So I'm going to go with Clarissa Shields by TKO tonight. I think she gets the job done. We'll see. Tweet at me, at Man in the Cage Pod, if you agree. Again, leave me a comment right here on the YouTube Live if you agree or disagree, whatever your prediction is for the PFL 4 card tonight. And again, I'm going to go about, I don't think I mentioned this actually at the beginning, trying to go about, I was going to go like 10 to 20 minutes. I'm already over. So I'll try to hurry this up and get out of here, as I do have some more, again, podcasts to record tonight. Episode 94 of the Man in the Cage podcast coming out late tomorrow, previewing everything with Bellator 260 and then also UFC 263, some other good stuff as well. So I'm going to get out of here in a second. But the rest of the card, you have Joyton Luberbach taking on Clay Collard. I'm going to take Collard by decision in that one. Love Clay Collard. The guy's awesome. I mean, he, once upon a time in the UFC, fought Max Holloway. Then he goes to, then he had a little bit more of an MMA career. And then he went to boxing, had some success in boxing. I think he's still going to box a little bit. But he went to boxing, of course, and including during the pandemic, beat a number of top prospects, just came at them like they've never seen before. And his style of his MMA background has really helped him at boxing. So he does that. And then he goes to the PFL. He beats Anthony Pettis, upsets him there in his PFL debut, ruins the welcoming party. Now he gets Luderbach here. And I think it's going to be Clay Collard once again getting the job done. I think he gets it done by decision because he's not an overly powerful puncher, but Clay Collard likes to put it on you, the volume, all that good stuff. Now, he does get a little tired sometimes, especially how he fights. So, maybe late he would get finished here, be put in some bad spots like he was in the Anthony Pettis fight. But That was Anthony Pettis. This is a little bit different. Nothing against Luderbach, but this is not Anthony Pettis. So I'm going to go Clay Collard by decision. I think he gets the job done, and I'm actually rooting for him. Hopefully, that'd be cool if he could get $1 million. That'd be awesome. Good for Clay Collard. Bubba Jenkins taking on Bobby Moffitt. I'm going to go Bubba Jenkins by decision. I know Moffitt is a popular upset pick here. Bubba Jenkins had some time in Bellator. Bobby Moffitt's had some time, I believe, in the LFA or was it the UFC? I think he did actually. So both these guys are. Have some backgrounds of big time promotions. It's going to come down to some small things here. The betting lines right now in Vegas, I think they should be a little bit closer in this fight, certainly, but I'll take Bubba Jenkins by decision, maybe even a split decision. He had an upset his last time out too. So he's definitely vibing off of that one and really coming in strong, really looking to continue that against Bobby Moffitt here. But that should be a very good one. And then Brendan Loughnane taking on Tyler Diamond. That's also a main card spot. Never one where the last one I thought about taking Bobby Moffitt, the upset. I'm actually going to take the upset here, though. I'm going to take Tyler Diamond to win by decision over Loughnane. And another good one. I like all these fights. That's the thing. Again, yeah, there's no Anthony Pettis. Yeah, there's no Lance Palmer, but we get Shields making her debut. We get Collard versus Luderbach. We get Jenkins Moffitt. We get Loughnane Diamond. Elsewhere on the card, you have Nathan Schulte. You have Marcin Held. You also have Olivier Aubin-Mercier, of course, a couple former UFC guys there facing off tonight. I actually like Mercier maybe to get the upset as well by that split decision. Maybe Schulte can do something special in his fight. So a lot of good fights coming up tonight on PFL 4. Thanks for joining me on this pop-up episode of the Man in the Cage podcast, the YouTube live. I'm going to try to do these again. I think a week or so, I cut them down a little bit. I wasn't doing that. So I was a lot of things going on, very busy with my family for my birthday, but going to start bringing these to you guys again, especially every Friday. So I'm probably going to look to do one tomorrow again, right here, another pop-up episode on the Man in the Cage podcast. So make sure you go to the YouTube channel if you haven't yet. Just make sure there's no comments still coming in yet. Nothing yet. So and you can always tweet at me on Twitter as well, Instagram, if you have any, at Man in the Cage Pod. But go to YouTube if you haven't subscribed yet, the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. Subscribe to it. I have a new episode coming out tomorrow, episode 94, with Eddie Cross, actually, from Fight Night Radio, 104.9, The Horn, in Austin, Texas. Going to bring him on to help me talk about UFC 263 tonight. Also going to do a full preview of Bellator 260. We're going to have everything broken down for you. We'll go through things even a little bit more, a little less rushy here than I did in this live. So we'll break everything down on that. You want to listen to it, episode 94 of the Man in the Cage podcast. And then I'm also going to be joined by Lance Wright tonight, a Bellator middleweight, newly signed Bellator middleweight, trains at Team Elevation in Colorado. He's going to join me. That episode will probably episode 95, 96, something like that next week. I'll have official news on that when the actual release date is going to happen over on Twitter again, at Man in the Cage Pod. And a shout out to the sponsors, DBK Media, Bovada, both great sponsors on the show. And you'll hear that on my podcast each episode as well. And you can go to the website to see those sponsors and everything they do for me week in, week out, day in, day out, right here on the Man in the Cage podcast. And that website again, maninthecagemmma.show. All right, everybody, thanks for joining me. Enjoy the PFL card tonight. We're about 32 minutes now away from that card kicking off. So enjoy the card tonight. And then we have more fight days. This is fight day number 1 of 3. We have a bunch of great cards coming up, a bunch of great fights. I'm really pumped for the rest of the week. I hope you enjoyed, and then come back right here tomorrow for another YouTube live whenever I get it going. And then also come back for episode 94 of the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. All right, everybody, take care. I'll talk to you later.